sits 18, and I am with the indefatigable James Finister.
Can you spell that, Barclay?
No. Who has won the competition this week for the best or worst hotel room view ever. Well done for that, welcome.
I've been trying very hard for many, many years.
Yeah, you must be so proud.
I am. I will treasure it for life.
For those that don't know, a number of us do share, rather sadly, photographs on social media about our hotel rooms. But anyway, let's talk about where we are in the industry. Because there's a number of themes flying around at the moment. We've got AI and that whole kind of robotic process development. We've got the world of frameworks and what they may or may not bring. We've got still a very active vendor market. From where you sit with TCS and the sort of clients that you're dealing with, what are you hearing from them? What are they saying they need more of, or where the demand is?
So let's talk a little bit about my type of client at TCS, because let's be fair, they're not a typical client. They're large multinationals, complex organizations, complex value streams, complex businesses, complex IT, and that probably ties into where I'm going to go with this. What we're seeing is that solutions for a simple world aren't working in the complexity, the chaotic world my clients now have. And to me, the highlight of the conference so far has been Dave Snowden's session on Cynefin framework, complex adaptive systems, and the need for us maybe to replace our very framework-centric, process-based approach to life that we've all got used to over the last 20 years with much more of a learning approach. And I think that's interesting. Is it a case of the next great framework will be the one which finally answers all the questions, or will it just be more of the same? And I think there's a degree of cynicism in the market that it will just be more of the same, and even attempts to synthesize those frameworks, obviously I'm thinking about Verisim here, doesn't move away from the fundamental problem.
Do you think does that mean then that the frameworks are just, by definition, they are flawed or unhelpful, or is it a matter of scale more to say, well, we need to pare them back massively so that we just have because there's key elements in ITIL that are kind of universal, that we all kind of know and love or hate, but they're there. There's key elements in pretty much every model that comes along that are really useful or new or thought-provoking. But I suppose the question is, do we try and synthesize them, or do we just say, look, there's got to be a point where, and at the moment it seems to be about people and people skills and flexibility. Cynefin is about understanding the situation that you're in, so that then requires some person to understand that and define it. So do we get rid of frameworks altogether, or do we just need to pare them back?
It's a good question, and it's not as simple as that. Obviously, I'm one of the ISO authors. We've got a new version of ISO 20000 coming out fairly soon. ISO 20000 is very useful to get you to a certain base layer. What it won't do is get you to giving a service which makes your customers ecstatically happy. And at some point, we have to move out of framework thinking into a more emotional, dare I say, in an IT world, way of thinking, a more adaptive way of thinking.
You've been to Oregon, haven't you?
Not yet. I don't want to denigrate frameworks as such. I think the issue is when you've grown out of a framework. I guess it's like riding a bicycle with stabilizers. There's a point where you actually need to take the stabilizers off the bike and learn to balance dynamically, because that's when you're actually learning to cycle.
Yeah.
And I think that's something many organizations are scared to do, because a framework is still a safety blanket. We've done ITIL, we've done ISO, we've done DevOps, and looks very good in your CV. It doesn't make for a happy customer.
I mean, to me, they're all catalysts rather than endpoints, and that's been the problem that we've had.
So I'm not a scientist, but my view of a catalyst is it's something you put into a chemical reaction to make things happen, but it's not the key ingredient. And I think that's the mistake we've made. We're seeing the framework as the answer when the framework is actually a stepping stone, a method to help you get to the answer. And that answer is going to be very different for different organisations, which is why it's very hard for one framework to suit all purposes.
One thing, certainly from my perspective, is that because we have had quite a lot of more new stuff in the last few years, and each one of them has body of knowledge, maybe spawned some training, maybe it's got a membership organisation, a whole pile of things which kind of thins it out a lot more. But usually there's a good idea in each of them. How do we stop that? How do we stop more of those things happening rather than getting good ideas into the mainstream, whatever that is? But, everyone starts something new and it's great, but then it doesn't fit with anything.
So again, I think I have to be careful what you need to do. There's nothing wrong with good new frameworks coming along. I think it's more about maybe we need to be clever simply about how we adopt and adapt and deliver these frameworks. That we stop relying on the evangelist who wants to do everything by the book as written into the framework. But we understand these frameworks aren't the first framework to come in and deal with these issues. And one problem I think we have is a very short corporate memory. I remember putting in Deming systems 20 years ago, and yet somebody can come on with a new framework now, and I'll look at it and think, oh, that's just Deming again, isn't it? I think it's a cultural thing. It's about, look, okay, this is a tool, this is something which just gives us a way of working, but what we need is still the people who are, for instance, people. And yet, I've always said, many years, you've known me for many years, but given a choice between an idiot putting in place a process and a clever person delivering a service, I'll always go for that clever, and by clever I mean emotionally clever, person putting in the service. It's not the frameworks are bad, it's that frameworks are not what we've made them out to be. They're not, I'm very careful because I work for TCS, they become a sacred cow almost, or a statue, an icon we worship. We forget what's behind that icon.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose ultimately we've got to, as you say, embrace the emotional. I mean, I think because the more automation there is as well, the more we focus on what's important that we actually do as human beings. So then the emotional intelligence part of it is absolutely key. That's the bit that will be hardest to automate and probably we never want to automate.
I don't know, compared to the average IT person, most AI bots I know probably have slightly more emotional IQ.
Watch what you're saying, James. You don't know who's watching this.
But isn't it interesting? I'm a big fan of AI. I studied AI at university before it was fashionable back in the 80s. What concerns me is people putting AI in because it looks good on their CV or in the corporate strategy for that year, not asking the fundamental question, what does the organisation get out of this AI solution? What other things could we have done instead? How do we most exploit it? And how do we actually explain to the business what they're getting out of it as well? And let's be quite honest here. We're techies, we like tools, we like technologies. Yeah. Some people in the business talking to an AI bot is actually quite an unsettling experience. I mean, we talk about the uncanny valley where robotics and AI start to resemble human, but you can tell they're not quite.
Yeah.
And for the customer experience, that can be a very, very negative experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way you said that there was slightly disturbing in the sense that you said, we explain to the business what we're doing. They should hopefully be part of the demand and the drive to do that. I mean, that's a difficult one in these days, I think, because do they know what's available? So there's a kind of fine line between those two things.
And it also touches another topic which we're seeing a lot of, which at the moment is that shift to enterprise service management. A realization for business services, customer-facing services, and IT that essentially they're all delivering services. There are common ways of working, things we can leverage across them. The AI bot we talk with internally as a person when our IT system fails might be the same AI bot one of our customers is talking to when they ring from outside the company. And when I say the same AI bot, I mean the same AI engine looking at both data sets as part of a big picture.
Yeah.
So now our internal AI support bot is beginning to understand the impact of his service failure on the business. Now that, I think, becomes a very, very powerful multiplier. But it's been sold on the business value. But the fact that it's an IT tool doesn't make it an IT solution, if you like.
No, it's not. So just finally wrapping up then, I mean, what's... presumably you're still very busy and travelling and doing all sorts of things at the moment. What's coming along next? What are you going to be developing in the next year or two?
I think the biggest emphasis will be on enterprise service management for us. That's linked into exploiting the latest developments in some of the tools. Interestingly, a big one we're seeing is a return to emphasis on pricing and charging models. Understanding the cost of providing services, making that cost visible to the business and potentially using it as part of chargeback mechanisms. And obviously also, because what I do is a living, there is still a long way to go on getting supplier ecosystems to align with that end-to-end business value. So there's a lot to be done. I've already mentioned as well that ISO, we've got the new version coming along. So
is there a new ISO version coming?
There is a new ISO version coming along. Should be published. Part 1 should be published fairly soon. Certainly, the final draft is in existence.
Yeah.
Of course, we've also got whatever happens next to ITIL to consider, and influencing that, making sure that success is also one of my personal priorities.
Good. Well, I look forward to discussing all that stuff more with you. Thank you very much.
I'm sure we'll get the chance. Thank you, Barclay.
Thank you.